Well, hello there, all of my littles. It's time for story time with Auntie Mir. And today I'm going to be reading you a story that I usually read around Earth Day. But it's okay because Earth Day can kind of be around any time. It's also a really beautiful time of the year right now where lots of people are spending time in their gardens. So here it is, one of my most favorite books ever, called The Curious Garden. Now in this book, there's a very good message about this little boy here named Liam. And I want you to try and think as I'm reading, what do you think that the author, Peter Brown, is trying to teach you? The Curious Garden. Oh, almost forgot my reading glasses. Silly. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. So just have a look at that picture. Oof. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam had made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for this curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, opened the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last things he'd expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. He returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. Now the next few pages don't have any words, but I'll have you have a look. All those beautiful flowers growing. You can really notice the colors are changing too. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. You can see he's reading a book about gardening. Winter had taken a toll on the garden, but thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. And you can see this is the second time here he has little music notes because he's singing to the plants because I think they like it. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Oh, on a stop sign, on a fire hydrant. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. All kinds of new people coming to help. And again, no words here, but just have a look. All the different things that are happening. Lots of happy people, lots of color. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed, but of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. And then on this page, I always do a comparison to the beginning. So if you can remember the very first page, we saw lots and lots of smokestacks. It was very gray and yucky looking. Look at the sky is brown. Looks very dreary. And after all that gardening, this is what the city looks like now. And often my students will notice that there are windmills and you don't really see smokestacks anymore. They're trying to do things that are healthy for the earth. And even the sky, look at that. Wow. And that is the end of the Curious Garden. And I'm curious, what do you think that the lesson is? I think some of you are thinking, I know, I should plant a garden, but it's a little more than that. How many people did it take to start to make that change? Just Liam. So all it takes is one person to make a big difference. So if there's something that you're passionate about, maybe you could be a person like Liam who starts to make a real difference. I know you can do it. All right. That's it from me. Keep being good, and we'll see you next time on Storytime with Auntie Mir.